Hello, hello, hello to Healy Word. Welcome to the call and thanks for joining us. We are happy to offer the Masterclass series every second Friday of the month. At 2 p.m., it's now 2 p.m. in English with wordly translation. You're all familiar with that. And for all other EMEA languages, it's all in wordly. And for the German call, we have in about an hour at 3:15 for the DACH region in German. Today, we will cover the basics of the information field, the microcurrent basics, the quantum entanglement, and the Healy unique selling proposition. And I'm now looking forward to present the genius behind the product. He knows everything. He works more than 10 hours a day for Healy and knows every question you ask him. Please give a lot of hearts in the chat to the one and only Product Chief Officer, Martin Wittmann.
Hello, thank you. So today we're actually covering a quite challenging subject, and that's really the science behind the information field and microcurrent, and of course bringing it all together in an example. And yeah, that explains how this technology actually works in general and why it is so successful in all the things that we actually do. I will share my screen then to not waste any time because it's a little more today. Okay, so since it's the beginning of the year, we start really with a lot, and that's the science and information field. So it's the science, philosophy, and the metaphysics, because we all need to be aware that all those things are combined and actually make up the technology. So first things first, information and its fundamental importance. So as we all know, information is key. If you have more information than your competitor, you usually win. And also in information field analysis, information is fundamental. So what does that actually mean? It actually means that you can put it also in a formula, and that's on the left side you see the famous formula from Einstein, and that's E equals mc square. So the energy equals the mass to the square of the light speed. And on the right side, you see the information formula. And as you can see, the information is also made up of energy, time, 6 times phi, and divided by the Max Planck Plankton. And that means that information has an energy. Very, very small energy, but it has an energy. And that's also makes you aware that information actually does something, because something that has energy definitely does something. And if you look a little deeper, also John Wheeler, he said it from bit, which means something from some information. So bit is usually for everyone that knows computers, there are bits where we calculate how fast our internet is, how big our files are. So those are usually basically in bits. And an object is an it. So something comes from an information. So my example is always if you build a house. So if you build a house, you don't have like you have concrete, you have wood, you have windows and so on. You don't start with that. You always start with an information. So the vision, how this house should look like, or the idea to build a house. And the idea follows the will to do it. Then you go to an architect, and in the architect then basically creates for you the first draft of your house, and then at some later point you start to purchase the concrete, to purchase the wood, and then you start to basically build the house. But the idea, the information, was the first thing that actually started it. Then also one quite important thing for the whole presentation is Anton Zeilinger, who was also called Mr. Bean. So he showed through his experiments that quantum teleportation is possible, and that quantum entanglement connects two particles that are far away from each other. So basically what they did, they had a photon, and they had a photon with a spin, and they basically gave a photon a spin and measured the same another photon, and also the spin basically changed. So they teleported this information. Those two photons were quantum entangled, and that's exactly what we are also using. Now, the information field. So what is the information field all about? So we have many words for the information field. So we have morphogenetic fields, as Rupert Sheldrake is using it, who is a biologist. We have the Akashic fields, which is, for example, heavily used and explained by Erwin Laszlo. You have persuasive information fields, which is also used heavily in science. And you have basically William B. Miller, who's one of the main characters that used this kind of wording. But at the end of the day, it's all the same. You can also call it collective unconsciousness, like C.G. Jung called it. All those principles describe something that is not touchable, but very powerful, because there's lots of information inside, and this information basically connects everything in a way that we are not aware of initially. But if we basically know those things, then it gets clearer and clearer. One very, let's say, famous couple is Carl Gustav Jung, which I mentioned already, and Wolfgang Pauli. So Carl Gustav Jung is on the psychological side, on the psychiatry side, and Wolfgang Pauli is a very famous physicist who also won the Nobel Prize. And they had a discussion over decades to basically get to the bottom of how this world actually works. So how do those things actually connect? And as both of them, and to basically get into deep in their profession, they reduced, of course, the world to a very small world that they looked at and to understand it. But they realized very quickly that to understand the whole thing, you need to broaden your horizon again and include everything. And only if you include everything, every level that we are aware of and we are maybe also not aware of, then you understand how this world actually works. And they came up with the information field, as they called it, unus mundus, or psychological reality. So they had the empirical facts and the consciousness, and these two things are basically in a constant holo movement. So with the holistic reality, so implicit order, our collective or individual unconsciousness. So unus mundus is one word, basically translated. And so there's a constant observation and emergence of consciousness. So you cannot basically divide your consciousness from empirical facts. Those are connected ultimately, but they are also basically moving between let's say, unconscious things and conscious things. And later we will come to David Bohm, and he basically said, okay, that's an explicit order, and the unconsciousness or the individual unconsciousness is an implicate order. And there you have this holo movement that I already mentioned, which basically is happening all the time. So here we have a nice paper from Marcus about the information field and the bioenergetic field. And we refer to the quantum processes of our body, mind, and deeper psyche as a person's individual information field, which means everything that's basically going on concerning one person is your individual information field. And it consists, of course, of the quantum information contained in the sum of the generalized quantum entanglements. So all entanglements that we have with everything, that basically makes up our individual information field. But the subset of this information field, our individual information field, is recognized by the National Institute of Health as the bioenergetic field. And the bioenergetic field communicates with the biological body via dynamic quantum processes. So that's what we are basically referring to, and later we will also have the part about microcurrent, that this, let's say, bioenergetic field is also entangled and quantum processes are happening all the time. So we are basically trying to harmonize or harmonizing it using frequencies, and those frequencies of course also are entangled with the rest of our individual information field. As I said, everything is somehow connected, even if it's not so obvious at the beginning. And here's some really nice graphics that Marcus came up with. It was a funny story also. We were in a, how do you call it, a lightning house near the sea. And of course, it was built as a place where you can sleep. And there we had the vision to illustrate what is in Marcus' head, basically. So all the knowledge that he has, we wanted to illustrate it in a way that other people also can understand it. And that's basically what we came up with. And I'll guide you through this graphics shortly. So on the bottom, you have the body. Everyone knows this. It's what you can touch. It's your body. It's the environment, everything around you, your molecular body. Then you have your electromagnetic body, which means, as we all know, there's current going through our body all the time. So if I move a muscle, if I move my hand, there's electrical current moving it. And the main muscle that we are moving all the time is our heart. And this is also a very big magnetic field that we have there. I had magnetism in medicine when I studied, Master of Biomedical Engineering, and there you had a gradiometer, which is, let's say, so big, but it was cooled with liquid nitrogen so that you actually can measure magnetic fields. And if you place it really near to your heart and are in a special room where you basically block out all the other magnetic fields, then you can measure your ECG, so your heartbeat, with this magnetic field. So what does that mean? To create such a magnetic field, of course, there must be a current going through your heart, which is so big that it creates a magnetic field. Because as we know, magnetic fields and currents are always existing next to each other. So if you induce a current in a whatever, let's say, wire, also magnetic field is automatically generated at the same time. And this is our electromagnetic body. So there we have also biophotons. As you know, there's a small, really narrow light going or created in our cells all the time. We have the cell membrane potential that we also consider very important. So if your cell membrane potential is healthy and big, then all the toxins can go out of your cells, and new things can get into your cells, or new nutrition. And if this doesn't happen anymore, it's like with us, if we cannot eat anymore, then yeah, we have a problem. And then the next level there, it gets more, let's say, subtle, and that's quantum processes. So all this electromagnetic body and molecular body is then quantum entangled. And there you have also our, as we called it formerly, quantum sensor. Now we have a resonance sensor. And there are all the bioenergetic processes. As we know, we are not a, let's say, a very simple being. We have also an energy field, which is also made up of the magnetic field that we are generating through the current that is going through our body. So what we have at the next is the bioenergetic field of the body. There, of course, it's something that you cannot see, or some people can see parts of the bioenergetic field, but you know that you have it because there is energy going around all the time. And then, of course, we have the individual information field and the global information field. And if you look in the middle, you have the individual information field, which is or consists of the mind, the soul, and the body. So you have those three entities that basically make up your individual information field. And then, of course, in the global information field, you have every living organism in the universe included. And of course, there you have the main thing that's connecting all those things is quantum entanglement. So let's go on. Now, I already mentioned his name, David Bohm, and David Bohm's implicate order and the hidden variables. And this is the second most important slide of this presentation about information field. And that is the let's say classical or conventional interpretation of the quantum theory. And on the right side, we have the unorthodox interpretation of David Bohm. So what do we have? We have particle and waves. And the thing that you always hear if you hear about quantum physics and so on is the observer effect. So you have a particle and a wave, and if you observe a particle, you see the particle. But if you don't observe the particle, it's a wave. So that's the theory. Which means ultimately, if you have any particle, any electron, photon, whatever you have, and you don't observe it, it's a wave. But this wave is not defined by this theory. It's basically everywhere. So it's a wave function that basically goes through the whole universe. And the moment I look, this whole wave function collapses, and then you have a particle. And David Bohm said, okay, that doesn't really fit physics. That basically, as you have also the quote, if you're not scared of quantum physics, you didn't understand it. And that's why people were scared of it, because everything didn't make any sense anymore. Because if a wave is everywhere and then you look at it and it's a particle, how does normal physics work? But David Bohm said, nah, maybe we have a different interpretation, and that's if you have a particle, and this particle, it moves on a certain wave uh, along the universe, basically. And if you observe it, then you see basically the particle on this certain point in this wave. So it's basically like an inner voice. For us, we could call it an inner voice that is guiding us in a certain direction. And that's the theory that, of course, makes much more sense also for physics, because then it's not everywhere the particle. No, it moves just on a certain wave along a certain line. And of course, that's also what we can use as a picture for the information field. So that's also what we use. So it's not everything is not random. And if you look at it, it gets you see something. No, it has a certain meaning. It has a certain sense to it. It has a certain path through life, and we have a certain path through life, and that's our inner voice that is also guiding us through life. And this unconventional or unorthodox theory was originally said, okay, it doesn't make any sense because it's the same result. I mean, so it's nothing new. So the physicists didn't really like it. They said, okay, it's nothing new. We don't need it. But actually, it makes a difference. So now the question is that I also get very often, the interaction between consciousness, information field, and physical noise generators, or physical noise generator entanglement. So first of all, the quantum nature of physical noise generators. So what does that mean? So the question was always, to what extent is thermal noise a result of the quantum world? So thermal noise is what a noise generator basically generates, and it's 2/3. So 2/3 of the data that basically comes out of a noise generator is based on quantum events. And those quantum events, of course, can be changed. Those quantum events we are using. So what is the theory behind this? So we have the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, so the peer lab. And what they did, they used quantum entanglement in form of noise generators. And they said, okay, we have noise generators. And now we try to influence those noise generators with using our mind. And you can see on this very old screen that there's a curve going up, a curve going down, and a curve basically in the middle. And in the middle is if you do nothing. If you don't bother the noise generator, it just goes around this line basically in the middle. But if you concentrate on it and say, okay, I want to increase the line, decrease the line, or change the color of a lamp or something, then it goes out of the confidential interval. So it's uncommonly, let's say, change the noise data. So noise data in our digital world is always zeros and ones. And if you take 100 samples, you have the highest probability is that you get 50 zeros and 50 ones. And very uncommon is if you get 0 ones and 100 zeros. And that is if this happens more often, then you're out of the confidential interval. And that's what happened, what actually happened, and what they realized. They realized also if you have a couple that is basically concentrate, so someone that's emotional or two persons that are emotional bound to each other, then you have an even bigger effect. So emotions and your conscious, let's say, focus actually make a difference. The same Richard Blesband actually realized, and he was a psychiatrist, and he performed a session with his patients, a therapeutic session, and there you have also 3 lines. And the middle line is basically when they talked about how the patient is, how the patient came to him, and so on and so on. And then at one point, usually in such therapeutic sessions, you trigger something. You find something that actually angers the patient or that he has a problem with, or basically his main issue. And as you see, when the patient got angry, then it went out of the confidential interval, it went straight upwards. And then if you basically talk about the issue more, you usually realize that there's a traumata behind this anger, and what is the real reason or the real source of the problem. And then you have at one point the anxiousness and crying, and people are basically releasing this caught up energy. And there you see it basically goes rapidly down this noise data basically. And that is very, very significant in our case, because exactly such effects we are using. So what is consciousness and physical noise generator entanglement? So here you have a conscious Henry step, and a conscious observer influences the observation in unorthodox quantum theory. What does that mean? So you know the observer effect, and you say, okay, if you look at something, then you see the particle, otherwise it's a wave, and so on. But is your consciousness actually influencing something? And usually in the normal quantum theory, you say, no, your consciousness is irrelevant. It just happens. It's just there. But Step said, no, it influences actually. It influences actually your result. And that is very significant. It's not about, everything happens without you doing or being able to influence something. No, now you're able to influence something with your consciousness. And now we have the physical noise generator. That's, for example, a physical noise generator that's shown in the picture of a time weaver device. And Then we have Roger Nelson also here, and he's performing this huge network, or running this huge network of noise generators around the world, and this is called Global Consciousness Project. And what he said is he introduced the concept of an information field as a common background language for consciousness and quantum entanglement, quantum event triggered physical noise generators to influence each other. So what does that mean? That actually he is of the same opinion that your consciousness actually influences such physical noise generators and the results that you basically get. And Roger Nelson basically describes a noise generator as a chaotic, unstable system ready to absorb information from its environment, which means that the environment has an influence and can influence, of course, the results of such a noise generator. As quantum events absorb information non-locally, the entropy of a physical noise generator can change as a reaction to information patterns from distant origin. And that's also very important. So since we are talking about entanglement, and as we had from Mr. Bean in the beginning, so things can be entangled over long distances. So that's why also information field analyzers actually work even if someone is not next to in the room with you. Now, generalized information field entanglement. So this is actually the most important slide of this presentation. So what do we see here? So we have first on the bottom, we have the bioenergetic field, so system B it's called here. Then we have the individual information field. And then we have the noise generator, and then we have the database information patterns. Now, what is actually happening here? So you can imagine, or you can simply say, okay, up there we have a Healy, down there that's you. On the right side, it's an information field, either it's your or that's of a client. And on the left side, you have the app, so the Analyze app, for example. So what is now happening? So you have usually an information transfer from the bioenergetic field to the individual information field, which is always the case. There's some information going back and forth. Your conscious focus is, of course, included there. Then you have an entanglement, of course, between those two. Then you have an entanglement between the noise generator, so your Healy, and your information field. And you have the database, which you are using as an analyzing tool. And you can see when you analyze that this data that is actually used for the analysis is actually, let's say, displayed also during the analysis. And what happens during the analysis is that the data, for example, I explained it in simple words. So if you have, I don't know, 38 bug flowers, and then you see, okay, you get some noise data for the first bug flower, some noise data for the second, third, and so on. So you get all this noise data, and afterwards you see, okay, which of those noise data are having or are basically converted to relevance. So you're basically searching for the really, let's say, uncommon things, so that you have, if you have 100 samples, 100 zeros or ones, that you have maybe only one and 99 zeros. And that's what you basically have then, and then you display this as a relevance. So what is happening? So you are basically using the smartphone as your classical information transfer using the databases, which are entangled with the noise generator, which are entangled with your information feed or that of your client. And you are, of course, also entangled with your bioenergetic field. And then you actually get the information that is relevant according to your focus that you have for this person. And that's basically how information field analysis works. So you are using classical information with entanglement of your bioenergetic field, the noise generator, and the information field to get exactly the information that you want, based on your consciousness, based on your current focus. I hope this was somehow clear because it's not trivial, but let's go on to the next one because time is running and we also already have half of the time gone. The scientific basics of microcurrent applications. So what is this about? Of course, we all know we're using Healy, we're using electrodes, and microcurrent is going through our body. And we're using basically current that's in the range of our bodily current that's already used for moving muscles and so on. So first of all, the fundamental physical principles. So what we're using is extremely low levels of electrical current. So of course the current needs to flow, so there is some current, but sometimes you cannot even feel it. And you shouldn't feel it because if the current is too high, then it has a negative effect, of course. As we know, if you go to a outlet and put your finger in and you get too much current, that's not very healthy. But in low levels, current can be very, very positive. And we, of course, mirroring the body's own natural internal currents. That's what I already said. And of course, our body would not work without those currents. So it's integral to the cellular and bodily functions. Application in humans. So, of course, those moving ions that are basically carrying the electrical charges are essential for physiological processes, as we already had in living organisms, for example, in nerve or muscle functions. So, the effectiveness of microcurrent, of course, depends heavily on the mode of application. So which frequency you use, which ampere you use, so how high the level is of the current, and of course, how long you apply the current. And if you're using a sine wave, rectangular, or any other form of application. As you have the pulse frequency, signal shape, and the electrode placement. Electrode placement, of course, is also very, very important. So the developers of such microcurrent applications must basically possess a high level of knowledge, skill, and experience to basically bring all those things together and create a program that actually is working. So now, what types of current are there? So we have for one thing, of course, we have direct current. So this is basically just going in one direction, and it's a consistent unidirectional flow of electrical charges. Then we have alternating current, which we mainly use, and that's a periodical reversal of charge flow direction, which means it goes in one direction, goes in the other direction. And this way, you also have not so much, let's say, stress on the body as you could have with direct current. And you measure it in hertz. And of course, we have different currents already, as we said, and different frequencies already in our body. And that's brain waves, for example. It's 0.5 hertz to 150 hertz. Heartbeat, 0.05 hertz to 100 hertz. Muscle activity, 20 to 500 hertz. And nerve signals, 1 to 1000 hertz. And that's also, for example, Wittmann. Most of the programs are in this range of 0 to 1000 hertz, because that's what our body actually knows and produces himself or itself. The body naturally emits also, of course, an extremely low frequency electromagnetic field, which is of course associated with our physical processes, which I already said. If your heartbeat is one of those, your muscle movement. So this can also be or is a part of your bioenergetic field. So those small currents always create a magnetic field. So what types of currents or applications do we have? So we have the galvanic current, which is 0 hertz. It's direct current basically. Then you have low frequency up to 1000 hertz, then middle frequency up to 100,000 hertz, and then high frequency higher than 100,000 hertz. So we are using the whole spectrum when we're using Healy, or Healy, of course. So electrical current equivalent in cells, organs, or the body, and the body. So an electrical circuit is a network of interconnected conductors and components. It forms a pathway through the movement of electrical charge. So the concept of electrical currents helps to understand the behavior of biological systems, from individual cells to entire organs. So what we need to understand is that even our single smallest cell, they have their own microcosmos basically, and they have their own currents, they have their own things going on. So even on this very, very small level, you have an own ecosystem which has an own logic compared to the big system. So now microcurrents and their physiological or biophysical effects on biological systems. So we have an increasing cellular energy production. We have a modulating ion channels and cellular signal. We have optimizing cell membrane potential, stimulating protein synthesis, and improving blood circulation. So those are just a few of the positive effects that you get with microcurrent. Then the effects of microcurrent on cell metabolism, cell membrane potential, ATP production, cellular communication, and tissue regeneration. So tissue regeneration is also quite fascinating because there's, for example, if you have a cut and you have a wound, then of course the current that goes through your skin usually doesn't go through anymore. So there's a basically disconnection of the current signaling in your cell. And if you apply microcurrent, you can put some certain information back in this tissue that is actually not working anymore. Yeah, and of course, microcurrent can influence the cell membrane potential and modulate the cell's electrical potentials. So it can trigger and cascade positive cellular events. So usually, and everyone is aware of that we have our single cells, and those single cells have basically small holes in their membrane, and this is those are called ion channels. So those channels open, and something goes out of the cell or into the cell. For example, in the cell you have a mitochondria, and the mitochondria is basically the powerhouse, the engine of the cell. And this mitochondria is producing ATP. So if you're basically stimulating the mitochondria, you produce more ATP, so more energy for the cell or for the body in a whole, of course. And the application of microcurrent can then modulate those ion channels and influence cellular signaling. So you basically, how the body works on a cellular level, you can address using microcurrent. And that also already covers the microcurrent part, because in this webinar I can of course not go into deep, otherwise it would take 3 hours or 10 hours. So let's bring it all together. And I chose the Healy Advisor Analyze Meridian module to bring it all together. So how does this module work? So as we know, the meridian teachings and acupuncture are over 2,500 years old. So we are basically tapping into knowledge that's very old. And that's true for basically every module that we have, and for every application. We try to use the knowledge, the ancient knowledge that's proven to work in modern technology. And that's also one of the biggest traits of Marcus, that he basically connects those worlds. He doesn't, modern science often neglects, let's say, common knowledge or old knowledge, or things that are there for thousands of years. They say, okay, we do something new, we know it better, and so on. But usually they don't, and you should integrate simply this knowledge, which doesn't hurt and improves the overall results. So what we have there is, of course, a traditional Chinese knowledge that's very, very old. And what what the meridians are, they are basically 12 main energy channels that are going through our body, according to the Chinese teachings. So in each meridian is connected, of course, to a specific organ or functional group in the body. So that's also something, it basically brings together this whole energy and entanglement. So you have your energy channels, you have them basically connected to certain organs, and of course also quantum entangled with those organs. So if you stimulate something at the acupuncture point, you stimulate also an organ or something else in the body. So those entanglements and also physical connections are quite fascinating. And of course, along those meridians, you have those acupuncture points, like a pearl on a string. And each of them is basically connected to a certain, let's say, function in the body. And now, how can we benefit from this knowledge? And what we did is basically we created this module, and the first thing you do is basically a coherence analysis. So the first thing you do is you analyze which of the meridians is the most coherent. So then you get basically if it's hyperactive or hypoactive. So hyperactive is too active, there's too much going on, a little too much chaos. And hyperactive, there's not so much going on, so a little too rigid. In the middle, you have then the coherent space. And then you basically see, okay, usually you analyze the most incoherent meridians. And now you can enter your focus, because usually you go into such an analysis with a certain goal. And as we all know, the focus should be in the future. It should be formulated as it if would have already happened. So if it would already be reality. And then it of course needs to be positive because you want to achieve something positive. So you're basically describing a future state in the present as it if would be there already. A positive state, of course. And then you analyze all the acupuncture points, and there is happening exactly what I described before in the information field analysis. So what you're using is you have the acupuncture points as a database, and you're basically using your conscious entanglement with the noise generator and those data transfer of this single points to analyze which one is now for you actually the most important one. So you basically steering this analysis with your consciousness, with your focus to the point that actually is the most relevant. And then we analyze deeper the 2 points that are most relevant with the 5 databases that are behind this 2 points. And then you actually get your result list that is now reflecting your conscious focus on this positive, let's say, future state with the help of information field analysis. And now, since we wanted to connect it to the Healy also, to microcurrent, we're using the same, of course, to analyze the programs. So we say, okay, let's use the most incoherent meridian and then analyze which program is now the most relevant for you to use to basically get back in coherence. And of course, in those programs, we also have, for example, the real-time step or the resonance step or the selection step, where we basically select or analyze again the most relevant frequencies for you at that moment. And that the same thing happens. You are basically focusing, and that's also very important that you also need to keep in your mind. You should always focus on the result you want to get with this program. So whatever basically is your focus, that you should also focus on when you run the program with the electrodes, because the results that you get, so the frequencies that are analyzed for you, reflect your conscious entanglement with the noise source, so with the resonance sensor. So you are basically getting the frequencies that are most in resonance with your conscious focus, with your positive focus on your positive future state. So that's basically what's happening. Usually people do this unconsciously, so not concentrating actively on that, because it's very normal that you do a program, you want to get better. Very simple. So, but of course you can also do it consciously, or you at least understand now how the technology works at its core. And that's about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, dear Martin. Now you can send your emotions in the chat. And thank you very much, Martin, for this great and very valuable webinar and the important insights as well. And please, all Healy World members out there, please make a note in your calendar for the next webinars, because on February the 14th, we said every second Friday, on February 14th, again at 2 p.m., we will talk about aura analysis with Healy and also scientific insights and applications. And March 14th as well, also 2 p.m., Healy World leading the way in frequency and innovation. So we wish you all a nice weekend and good health and much success in building or expanding your Healy business. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye. Thank you, Martin. Thanks, parties, for preparing, and thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Bye. See you on Saturday.
Yes, right. See you on Saturday to the Healy World Meets World. Bye-bye.
Bye.